everybody, it's me, Shell360, and this is Shine Book Club Chapter 2. We read Chapter 1 a couple days ago, and I read Chapter 2 today. I was homesick, but I still managed to get my reading in because that's one of the things I do to make myself feel better. And Chapter 2 was a good chapter to me. I think that what made chapter 2 so good is that it didn't spend as much time concentrating on the issues between Rachel and Mina. It spent a lot more time concentrating on kind of the family dynamic for Rachel. We got to meet her father, her little sister, and her mother. And it's good to see those things because a lot of times when we're thinking about K-pop idols, we don't really think about their family that much. I know that personally, I don't think about the brothers and sisters of idols until something terrible happens, either because their brothers get caught up in some kind of scandal or because their family members were left to grieve over them after a tragedy, or because they have a family member who's a conniving opportunist and is looking to be a crypt keeper over them. But as it stands, a lot of times when we talk about idols and their families, we don't give a lot of consideration as to what they have to go through in order to be supportive of the trainee and then later on the idol. So, chapter 2 starts out with Rachel and Akari and then two of Rachel's friends in her father's gym because apparently Rachel's father is a former pro boxer and he had a gym in New York that was a pretty popular gym where a lot of people trained. And when the family decided to move to Korea, they bought an old gym in Korea, and that's where the father has been, plying his trade and trying to make money for the family. Now, this is the really interesting bit, and it's to me, it doesn't feel very realistic. You tell me what you think. In the book, the gym is not doing so well. The gym actually stays pretty empty. He's not making a lot of money off of it. And because of that, he decided to look for a different way to make money. His different way to make money is to attend law school. Now, I'm not one for saying that somebody can't be a boxer by day, attorney by night. That's not what I'm saying at all. What I'm saying is this: as a person who's been married in the past, most married people share a bank account. They have a joint bank account. Any expenses for the household, for the businesses, all that stuff, it's monitored fairly regularly because people want to make sure that the account doesn't overdraft. If you have spending goals and savings goals, you want to meet those goals. And so I just can't imagine the father being enrolled in law school and the only person in the family that knows he's in law school is his daughter Rachel. His wife doesn't know he's in law school, even though someone's got to pay for law school. So is it that the gym makes enough money for him to go to law school, but not enough money for him to be making money for the family? Like that's just, it's a weird side tangent, and it's something that I don't know. It could have been explained a little bit better. And then the mother, we find out that the mother works at Iwa Women's University, which I think is the name of a real women's university. Anyway, the mother is working at this university trying to establish tenure. She used to be a tenured professor in New York. And the mother apparently is super busy trying to attain tenure at this school in Korea, which is another thing that also makes this a really weird chapter because we established in chapter 1 that after the grandmother died, the whole family moved to Korea to help Rachel pursue her dreams. But, I mean, obviously, the mother must be thinking that she's going to be staying in Korea for the long term because if you weren't planning on staying in Korea for the long term, why would you try so hard to get tenure again? You got tenure at one university, you packed up your entire family, and now you're working towards tenure at another school. And for those of you who don't know what tenure is basically a lifetime job. So if you are a professor at a uni, you can be a part-time professor, you can be a full-time professor, but if you are a tenured professor, it basically means something dramatic has to happen in order for you to lose your job. Like something incredibly dramatic. Like you have to have murdered a student in class or, got caught burning down one of the admin buildings. Like it is very, very hard to lose your job once you are a tenured professor. And when you're a tenured professor, you have a lot of other benefits as well, like you get to choose kind of when you want to have your classes, what your class load is going to be. A lot of times professors get tenured not necessarily because they're the best professor in the world, sometimes because they do something that's really notable. So maybe they publish a paper that brings a lot of notoriety and a lot of grant money and other things like that to a school. And so these professors get tenured because they are considered a big asset to the school. And that's why the school feels like we'll guarantee you a job for life because you're going to bring in money that's basically going to pay for what we're paying you. So, I mean, it's a big deal to get tenured. And if you've been tenured somewhere, it's a big deal to leave a place where you got tenure. So, for the mother to leave New York at a school where she had tenure to go to another school and work towards tenure, which again, a lifetime job, it's a big deal, which makes me feel like there's one particular thing she says in here that is going to have to come up later on in this book. It has to. The mother basically says there was more than you being an idol that was involved in us moving to Korea, something to that effect. And it's got to be explained more. There's got to be something else that goes along with this, because otherwise it doesn't make any sense why the mother would do this. It doesn't make any sense why she would bring it up, because in real life, I could see the father giving up the gym to move to Korea. I don't see the mother giving up tenure. I could see the father moving to Korea with Rachel while Leah and the mother stay in America. And Leah's the younger sister, by the way. And then trying to work it out that way. But the whole family moving to Korea, it just seems like there's more to this story. So we've got this going on with the parents of Rachel. We have Rachel's little sister Leah, which all of us, of course, in our mind are saying, oh, that must be Crystal. Because, I mean, we're making these associations, so we're thinking that that's Crystal. And one of the things that I found really a good piece of writing on behalf of Jessica was they established that the sisters are very, very close. And because they are so close, it kind of makes up for the unfair situation that Leah is in. It doesn't make up for it completely, but it gives us some insight as to why maybe this move to Korea wasn't completely at the detriment of Leah. So Leah's the younger sister. We're guessing she's probably about middle school age, perhaps. And Jessica comes back home after doing a workout at the gym that her dad is at. And she's sweaty, her hair is a mess, her clothes are sweaty, you know, whatever. So she shows up and Leah's in the living room with 3 other girls from the middle school. And of course, they're like, Leah's told them, my sister's a trainee at DB Entertainment. So they've got all these questions about, what is Jason Lee like? And are these people going together? And like all the gossipy things that you would ask. And of course, Rachel doesn't have any information for him because trainee life is super dull and boring, and they don't get to hang out with celebrities like that, according to the way that it's portrayed here. So she doesn't have any answers for him. And of course, the girl's like, ugh, you're boring. You're not going to give us all the stuff that we thought being associated with a trainee would give us. So basically they thought that they could make friends with Leah, and because Leah's sister is a trainee, they'd have access to, you know, possibly autographs, gossip, all kinds of like inside and insider information for DB Entertainment. But that's not what happened. So the girls not only decided they want to leave because they're bored, but also they kind of drop Leah like a hot potato, which you can imagine how hurtful that is. And according to the book, this has happened to Leah several times, that friends have become friends when they found out that her sister was a trainee, and then dumped her once they realized that you don't really get any big perks from knowing a trainee, that trainees are basically a dime a dozen. But Leah is not super disheartened. She's a little bit mad at her sister because she's lost another batch of friends, but she also is encouraging her sister's K-pop dreams because Leah kind of has the same K-pop dreams. And so that's the reason why she's like, you know, I'm not going to be incredibly upset because one day it may be me who's going to need the support because I'm going to be the one on the stage, or I'm going to be the one in the training facility. And that's when Rachel tells Leah that there's this big trainee kind of practice going on that night that she'd like to go to, but of course mom never lets her go to the trainee house. So Rachel lies to her mother about it and tells her mother that she's actually going to go and study with a friend in anticipation of taking the college entrance exam, and that's where she's going to be tonight instead of at the training house. Which, this is after a conversation with her mother where her mother has given her the universal college application so that she can apply to go to college. And this is another thing that really bothers me about this book, and I hope that this gets cleared up in future chapters. The mother basically tells her daughter, like, okay, we've moved the whole family here so you can pursue being a K-pop idol, but you've been a trainee since you were 11 years old. You're now 17 in Korean age. Time to start thinking about going to college. So, has the mother given up on her daughter becoming an idol? Or is she like, you need a backup plan? Because it doesn't even sound like a backup plan. Because she says to her daughter, you know, I used to play volleyball. Where would my life be if I pursued volleyball? So, it's just conflicting messages. On the one hand, we feel like Rachel's family is very supportive of her. The fact that they moved from New York to Korea and they quit their jobs and all of that stuff. But on the other hand, the mom asking her to pursue college, also putting all the restrictions on her not ever spending any time in the trainee house, her not being able to quit school to devote her time to training, her only being able to do her trainee work after she's finished her homework and on the weekends. It makes it seem as if the mom isn't really supporting her dreams of being a K-pop idol. And then, like, Rachel herself is kind of a weird contradiction too. On the one hand, she constantly feels guilty about the fact that her family uprooted everything to come to Korea. But on the other hand, when her mom says, okay, maybe it's time to consider option B, she's like, how dare you? You know I want to be an idol. And it just is very confusing to me. But I will give grace to this. Being a teenager is confusing. You have moments where you really want to do one thing, but then on impulse you do something else. Your mind's still growing, not all the synapses have kind of reached their maturity. So you have feelings of, I would like to be more responsible, I would like to be more reliable, I'd like to do all these things, but I'm also a teenager and I still want to have fun and I still want to have my dreams. And so I thought that that was really good writing in terms of getting an idea of like who Rachel is as a person. But of course, we have some of the stuff that has been a problem since the beginning and is still a problem there. We get like really descriptive descriptions of food. We get a lot of like just minute details about people, like her candy red glossed lips, her navy blue striped nails. She has a thing for striped nails. And it's just like, I get it, but those details only work when they're relative to what's going on. So, telling me that somebody has blue striped nails, telling me that works if those blue nails are going to matter. But if those blue nails aren't going to matter, if it's going to not be, oh, the girl with the blue nails, then it doesn't really make sense to mention those kind of details. Also, I have to say this, and maybe it's just me. In the world of YA, there are very few in betweens. It's either people who are super rich, or it seems to be people who are middle class but calling themselves poor. And the characters in this book are very much that way. So you've got a character like Rachel, for instance, who she comes from a poorer family compared to Mina, whose family owns these conglomerate stores and all this other stuff. But Mina's mother was a tenured professor at NYU, and her father was a former boxer who owned his own gym. Those aren't petty accomplishments, those are big accomplishments. And the friends that she makes at the Seoul International School are a pair of sisters who are set to inherit a huge cosmetics corporation. Like, she doesn't have any regular friends. Even Akari, who is her Japanese friend, her dad is like high up in the military. So it's, again, it's, she doesn't have any like regular friends. Now, granted, Seoul International School, if it's kind of what I'm thinking of, it's probably one of those schools that you can't get into unless you're super wealthy, and that's why there wouldn't be a lot of poor people there. But then, if that's the case, what the hell is Rachel doing there? How did she get in the school? So that's why I say, like, it's just, I think that it would have made more sense to have things be more logical. I'll put it that way. Because it pulls me out of the story at times when the logic doesn't add up. But at the same time, I get that this is fluff and it's not anything to get like super upset about. So I'm not super upset, but I don't know. I would like things to make sense because then it kind of lets you concentrate on the story itself. And we're on chapter 2, and if you look at the story itself, there really hasn't been a lot that's gone on. Chapter 2, basically, we got chapter 1 establishing our world. Chapter 2 is us resolving the very first conflict we have, which is Rachel feeling like she needs to go to the trainee house in order to not look bad in front of Mr. No, which, I mean, I guess she's going to say that she would look bad in front of Mr. No if people went back to the company and reported that she never showed up. But at the same time, like, she's Mr. No's favorite. Mr. No thinks that she arranged the whole practice to begin with. I don't think her missing one practice would make Mr. No be like, oh, well, we can't take you seriously as a trainee because you didn't go to practice. Not only that, but like, as we established in chapter 1, Mr. No made an arrangement with Jessica's mother that Jessica was not going to live at the trainee house, that Jessica was not going to be doing all day training, that she was going to have a different schedule. She's going to live at home. If she didn't go to the trainee house and they told Mr. No, hey, Rachel didn't go to the trainee house, she could very easily go to Mr. No and say, talk to my mother. The arrangement you have with my mother says that I couldn't go to the trainee house. She would not let me go, and that's why I didn't go. Simple as that. That's it. That's solved. So, I mean, it's a conflict for sure because she feels the obligation to go there to prove that she's serious about her career. But we're, what, 6 years in the game now of being a trainee? Missing one practice at the trainee house after 6 years, I really don't think is going to affect too much. Not saying, just saying. Now, the character that I actually thought had a really big conflict, but it was kind of skimmed over, was Akari. So you're right. It kind of leaves you with more questions than answers. And I keep thinking that these questions I have, they're going to be resolved as we get further in the book. Because, like, literally, this is chapter 2. But Akari, who is Rachel's friend, she almost got dropped from the label, which that was a very interesting little paragraph. In fact, I think I might find that paragraph to read it to you, because when I was reading it, I was like, wow, okay, here's like some real actual kind of struggle, conflict stuff going on. Okay. So I'm going to read this paragraph for you guys so that you can get an idea of it and tell me how you feel. I wince. Even though she lives on base with her family, she's at DB every single day, training alongside Mina and the girls. And Akari's dancing skills are unbelievable. Yujin even says she puts Frankie from Red Hot, objectively the best female K-pop dancer in the industry, to shame. But everyone knows that when it comes to being a trainee, talent will take you only so far. That's why we're all desperate to do whatever we can to get noticed by Mr. No and the rest of the DB executives. Because every 30 days, like clockwork, trainees gather in the auditorium with DB's executive board, waiting to be evaluated and judged, deemed worthy of staying in the program or getting kicked out. After 6 years, the constant judgment was almost starting to see routine, until a few months ago when Akira was called into Mr. No's office after appraisal day, a sure sign she was being asked to leave, that she hadn't done enough to stand out. I don't know what Yujin said or did, but Akari was back the next day, a little quiet and sad looking, but still there. She hasn't brought it up since. I glanced at the twins, who shrugged their shoulders at a loss for words. So I'm surprised that she never brought it up again, or that Rachel didn't ask her more about it. But you do kind of, like, when you read that and you see that, like, Akari looks like she was about to get cut out and then she showed back up the next day. What's going on there? I want to know more about Akari. Also, one of the things that it says right at the top of the thing is that, even though Akari lives on base with her family, she's still at DB every single day, training alongside the rest of the girls. Now, Rachel doesn't even do that. So, Akari is not being made to live in the trainee house. So apparently she's got a special agreement with DB Entertainment. But at the same time, Akari is still putting in the work that Rachel seems to be unable to do. So I don't know. This Akari girl, I kind of want a whole book about her because she's a Japanese trainee, number one in Korea. So you know that there's a whole bunch of like social bias and shit that she's dealing with that you want to hear about. Akari has a father who's in the military. She was scouted for a Japanese company before she came to join DB. There's a lot there. Like that is a very interesting story. But yeah, I'm kind of, who do people think Akari is in real life? I don't know. But like all that I'm very interested in. I don't know because I had mentioned this when I did my review for chapter 1. There are no female SM trainees that have debuted as far as I can remember. If I'm wrong, let me know. But I cannot think of a single Japanese trainee that has debuted with SM that's a female trainee. They've had male Japanese trainees, but even that's very recent. Like that's NCT recent. But back when Jessica was a trainee, I cannot think of a single female Japanese trainee that has debuted. Or even one that's like super notable, to be honest with you. And like, yeah, I can't think of who that would be. America has been like the biggest kind of leap that SM has made in the past. They did have a Chinese singer. I think it's Jaemin. Is that the girl who was the Chinese singer on SM? But outside of that, they haven't had Chinese. Well, they had Chinese boys with EXO. That was their first big leap into the boy sphere. Was they had the Chinese members of EXO, but they haven't had any Japanese members prior to NCT. And then, oh, you're right, Victoria from FX. Maybe that's what she means. Maybe Akari is supposed to be an avatar for Victoria, perhaps? Could that be it? Maybe. I don't know. I mean, that is one of the things that I'm hoping she'll get at in this book because number one, I'm interested in it just on a personal level, but also you bring up Akari, bring up the fact specifically you made Akari's character Japanese. We all know that when it comes to Japan, Korea and Japan have a very sordid history. They don't really, things are still very, very rough. There's the whole situation with the Japanese occupation of Korea. There's a lot of issues of ownership of certain land. There's the whole comfort women situation. Like, it's just, there's a lot of history between these two companies. And Jessica knows this. She lived in Korea. She knows what's up. And so the fact that she specifically, purposefully made a trainee Japanese, I hope that she'll talk about that. I really, really do. Like, I think what would be interesting is if Mr. No decided not to debut Akari, not because she's not any good, but because there were a lot of tensions between Korea and Japan, and he felt like he can't debut her because the public's not going to accept her. Like, that would be a storyline to talk about, and I think that'd be really interesting. And if things don't work out for Akari and she's about to be 17, she can go back to Japan. I don't know. Like, it's a question. It is a question. And that is the other thing too. And you guys bring up a very valid point. This could be based on somebody who never debuted, because more people don't debut than do debut. And I think sometimes we lose sight of that. Like, there's a lot of really talented people who want to be idols. Hell, if you've ever watched a season of Produce, they choose, a couple of handfuls of guys out of 100 guys that applied for the show, or they pick a couple of handfuls of girls out of 100 girls who applied for that show. And so it's like winning the lottery to debut as an idol on a major label, not one of these little boutique labels who's just hoping to make a little money to cut and run. I'm talking about a SM, a YG, a JYP. You have to be the very best option in order for them to consider you. And sometimes even being a great dancer, which is what they're calling Akari, is not enough, because they still want you to be able to do variety. They still want you to be able to sing. And that's one of the things that a foreign trainee really does have a lot of battles with is variety, conversation, interviews. So, prime example, I really love Momo from Twice. I don't collect her stuff, but I don't know. I just feel like she's a really talented dancer, and she seems very diligent. And she's dating Heechul, which is fun. But I like Momo. But I know initially when Twice was doing promotions, Momo wasn't a really big part of a lot of the conversations. And it seemed like whenever she was involved with Variety, it was kind of like they cast her as being shy until it was time to dance. And for a while there, it seemed like it was going to be forever until we got to see her real personality. And obviously, the girl has got a great personality, because Heechul wouldn't be publicly declaring that that's his girl if he didn't find something more than passively interesting about her, right? But because Momo is Japanese and there's such hard feelings, I think Momo always had to be very careful about what she said and what she did, because she is the Japanese trainee. Same thing with is it Chui from Twice? Being is she Taiwanese? Do I have that right? If I'm wrong, let me know. I want to say she's Taiwanese, but she also is somebody who has to be very careful, because she's not just dealing with the fact that she's a trainee that's from not Korea, but also even at home she's got to be very careful, because the Chinese populace will be very angry if she declares herself Taiwanese. So it's almost better for her just to not talk, because there's all these political implications in everything that these two women do, outside of just them being an idol and singing and dancing and trying to do their job. So I can imagine it's very difficult to be a foreign trainee, because you're trying to learn to sing and dance and do all the things that the other trainees are doing, but you're also having to contend with a foreign language, a foreign culture set, making sure that the things that you do don't respect the Korean public that you're trying to help make you popular, but also don't disrespect the people that are at home. And you're also trying to get the public to like you and see past maybe their individual bias to really like who you are as an idol. And so, I mean, the trainees that are not Korean born and Korean raised have such a harder job than everyone else does, and we never acknowledge it enough. So that's why I say, like, if this book turns out okay and Jessica decides to write again, I would really love to see her write a story through that viewpoint, if at all possible, because it's not something that's really discussed, and I would love to see it discussed. And if she knows Victoria, she can tap Victoria on the shoulder and be like, hey girl, can I talk to you for a minute? Lucas doesn't like going on his social media much because of all the racist comments he gets. Makes me sad for the poor boy. That is unfortunate, because he doesn't deserve that. Nobody does. I always feel like it's a low blow to go to race. Like, it just shows that you don't really have the intelligence to come up with something other than the stupidest and most base remark. And it shows that you are a less than quality person. Because if I don't like a person, race is never the thing that I'm like, and that is what's wrong with you. Like, that's just not it. It's just not it. I've often said I don't feel comfortable sometimes in spaces with a lot of white people. I've said that before. But it's not because I feel like white people are bad. I mentioned it very specifically. I feel uncomfortable because I feel like an outsider, because I'm the minority. It doesn't have to do with them being bad people. It has to do with me and my comfort levels, because I feel like I'm alone. And I think that's a natural feeling to have. But if I had a problem with, let's say I'm just gonna pull a name off the top of my head. Let's say I had a problem with Ailey. If my problem with Ailey was that I didn't like her singing, I would say I don't like her singing. I wouldn't say, yeah, I don't like Korean girls. Like, what? What does that have to do with anything? What is you being born in a community and being born as a part of a community have to do with that? With me not liking you? That's dumb. That's really, really dumb. And so when I see netizen comments were like, well, what do you expect from Chinese idols? What do you expect from, Japanese idols? Whenever something bad happens with a Japanese idol or a Japanese trainee or a Chinese idol or a Chinese trainee, the first thing people say when it comes to Korean netizens is, oh, well, what do you expect from A, B, and C country people? And it's just so unfortunate because here we are, Korea supposedly being one of the top leaders of technology and everything else, but for the base thinking of certain people to be based on your race or the way your face is set up, like they're really big on, I think it's called phys- physiognomy, physiognomy. I don't know. It's this debunked science from like the fucking 17 and 1800s, maybe even later, where people used to say you could tell somebody's personality based on the way their phrenology, I think, where you could tell a person's personality traits based on the shape of their head, the layout of their face, their facial features. That would determine what kind of person they are. So like when Papa YG was getting in trouble with like the taxes and the gambling and all that stuff. Netizen comments were like, well, look at the way his face is. Somebody with eyes set like that, of course they're going to be evil. And it's crazy. It is crazy to me that you would take such an arcane and debunked science and in the 21st century be using that to make judgment calls on people's personalities. Like that's just so dumb. It's really super stupid. But that's a lot of what happens. And that's a lot of what these idols have to deal with. And they can't fight back and they can't say anything in retaliation because then they get blacklisted. It happened to Sam Ochery. When Sam Ochery tried to speak up and be like, hey, Black Lives Matter and you guys need to be more concerned about that or whatever, and it's embarrassing that y'all are not being more concerned, Korea was like, well, ship your ass back home, African. We don't need you anyway. And it was just like, God damn. Like, seriously. God damn. So, I say all that to say that even though that's not the point of this chapter, that is something I would be very interested in hearing about because those are the experiences that you don't hear about. And it's something that now that it's been brought up, I'm really invested in Akari's story. I want to see the best happen for her. My sadness, or what I really hope doesn't happen, because, I mean, I do like to do a little bit of forecasting. I really hope that because Akari gets dropped from the label, it doesn't cause her to out Rachel out of spite or bitterness because Rachel made it and Akari didn't. So I really hope that that's not what happens, but you never know. You never know what twists and turns might happen in a book. And if something like that did happen, I'd be sad, but at least it'd be something interesting, I guess. Chapter 3, I've done a little bit of reading ahead because when I first got this book, I told everybody I got it and I did like a little snippet read, and I happened to read like a couple of pages in Chapter 3. So I know that Chapter 3 is where we get to meet Mr. Jason Lee, and I'm very excited to meet Jason Lee for the first time, and seeing kind of how that all goes, and seeing if by the end of chapter 3 if it's very clear that they're going to be in a romantic relationship or if it's just going to be a little bit flirty and a little bit I can help you out with your career type of thing. So that's what I'm looking forward to seeing for chapter 3, because I feel like with his introduction we're finally going to get into the meat and potatoes of the whole book. Like he is going to be kind of kicking off the main activity, because from the snippet that I read, it seems like Mina has a crush on Jason as well. So if Mina has her eyes on Jason and Jason has his eyes on Rachel and Rachel and Mina hate each other, I could definitely see like some triangle type of stuff going down. But yeah, I'm interested to see how that happens, what goes on with that, and I look forward to reviewing more of these chapters with you. I will be doing the review for chapter 3 on Saturday, probably Saturday evening, so be looking out for that, because I'm trying to do my chapter reviews every other day if I can. So that's where we're at right now, and I thank you guys for watching, and I will talk to you later. Bye. Oh, wait, before I go, I gotta show you guys. On my review for chapter 1, I think you guys saw that Mason gifted me with a stuffed friend. And my stuffed friend, I adore him, but I felt like something was missing. So I took out my fabric pen and I decided to draw a little something on my stuffed friend to make him feel a little bit more friendly. So look, I put a smiley face on Mr. Peony. I love him. Isn't he the cutest? Mm. So yeah, now my little Mr. Peony has a smiley face. He's the cutest. But anyway, thought I'd share that with you guys. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll talk with you later. Bye.